Hi, this is a video about a minivan conversion project we did about 18 months ago. We wanted to make an extended camping trip to the US, but without breaking the bank. So we modified our existing 2007 Honda Odyssey and took off. It was a lot of fun. This video is about that conversion. First I'll talk a little bit about the trip itself, then I'll describe the design ideas using some pictures. Finally, I'll install the conversion in the van to show you what it looks like. We were on the road for about 3 months, beginning early in May and ending in the middle of August. My wife Margaret and I had retired and we wanted to see some of the well-known US national parks. They were our main focus. Along the way we stayed at intermediate stop points, state parks mostly. 1 or 2 times we camped at private campgrounds like KOA. And during the trip we stayed at 3 or 4 cities for weekend breaks and we used hotels for that. We always stayed in the van throughout the trip, except for 2 days in Tucson. I'll talk about that in a second. In some of the big national parks like Big Bend and Grand Teton, we stayed for a week. But for the state parks, it was usually just a night or two as we travelled on to our next national park. The heat, it was a summer trip and the heat was intense. In some of the parks, Rocky Mountain and Big Bend, we were able to camp up at a high elevation. In Big Bend, those mountains are at 5,000 feet and Rocky Mountain was at 9,000 feet, and that was very comfortable at night. But in Tucson, it was insanely hot when we visited there for Saguaro National Park. So we used a motel for the 2 days there. It was 40 degrees Celsius. It's like 104 Fahrenheit. It's crazy. Zion Park in Utah was pretty hot too. It was 37 there during the day. That's 98.6 Fahrenheit. In the afternoons we noticed people heading down to the river, Virgin River, in the middle of the campground with their chairs. So we followed them. They sat in the middle of the river reading their books to cool down. So we did the same thing. It cooled us down pretty nicely. The nights were cool enough and we slept in the van. But we really depended on having ventilation fans and cooling fans in the van, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a while. We're going on a 3-month camping trip. We didn't want to get an RV. It was too expensive to run or rent, and we already had an Odyssey 2007 van, so we decided to use that. Space is very limited in those vans, so we wanted to sleep comfortably, and that was a top priority. Next priority was to have abundant storage. When you're camping for 3 months, you need to have a lot of gear with you, and so you need to be able to store it and access it easily. All the work on the van needed to be 100% reversible. We wanted to be able to put the van back to its original condition and use it as a family van. And the conversion kit needed to be modular, so we could take it out of the van, store it over the winter in the basement, for example. So the first set of challenges came from the shape of the van. The van floor slopes up towards the back, and there's a lip at the back of the tailgate that reduces the clearance for any drawers that are sliding out the back. So it just complicates the design overall. There are no rectangular or very regular figures in the van. Everything is sloped and curved. It gives you a nice van, but it makes it hard to design boxes for it. The tailgate slopes inwards at the top. The windows themselves, where we might want to put venting, they're parallelogram and they slant to the back towards the back of the van. And if you look at the opening where the tailgate lifts up, the corners are rounded on the bottom. So any drawer opening that has to move towards the centre in order to clear that rounding. So what we did was we built a sleeping platform in the van. 4 feet wide is about the max you'll get right through the van, and we put about 97 inches long, which is roughly the size of a queen size bed. We want to make this platform from wooden boxes bolted together and make the boxes very strong to support weight of adults sleeping, but also make them as light as possible and secure the entire structure to the floor of the van. Those boxes cannot be moving around in the van, especially if you run into accident or something like that. We also wanted to install an independent battery for lighting and for ventilation fans. The ventilation itself was to be done by a powered vent that we would place in the window. We wanted to install curtains for privacy, and we wouldn't get all the gear for camping in the van, so we were going to use a car-top carrier for supplemental storage. So to begin with, we removed the middle seats and the rear seats. The middle seats come out easily enough, but the rear seats, you need about 7 bolts to undo those. It only takes about 5 or 10 minutes, but you need to be careful. The hinges are spring-loaded. So the first box, box A, all the boxes are labelled for quick reference for me. Box A sits in the rear seat well. It opens sideways laterally within the seat well. And in this we kept all our cooking gear, pots and pans. Also in the seat well are the cooler and stove. When you're cooking, we would take out the cooler and stove, and so we get access to box A without any problems. Box B sits on top of box A. Box B has a huge drawer that opens out through the back of the van. We use this for all the foodstuffs. Box C is in the middle. We use that to store the battery and some long-term items we wouldn't use day to day. It has a drawer, or sorry, a lid, no drawer here, so it's difficult to access. It's under the mattresses. At the front we have box D. This is also has a drawer. We use the box D as a personal footlocker for clothes and personal items. And box C is exactly the same. So we had a footlocker each, and they're very easy to access from the bed. You didn't need to open any of the doors of the van, whatever. You could get it very easily. Box F was the biggest box, and again it was for long-term items, and it has a lid on it. And to complete the platform, we needed a shelf that was hinged so that we could access to the cooler and the stove. So that's shelf G. It's shown in 2 parts here. We needed to be able to fold it for an original design. We had an extra shelf across the back. That's been removed, so shelf G could be a single shelf. So shelf G moves up and exposes the cooler. On top of all that, we put 2 mattresses. These are memory foam, about 5-inch mattresses. We bought a queen size foam mattress and cut it down with an electric carving knife into 2 24-inch mattresses, and then put a soda cover on top of those. In order to get access to the shelf G and the cooler, you just slide the mattresses forward and they just butt up against the front seats, and you get access then, no problem. And because all of the boxes and the platform is sanded and varnished, it's very smooth to push them. This is a plan view. It's roughly the same as what you've seen before. Looking down, you can see the boxes A, B, C, D, E, F, and shelf G. From the side, the driver's side, box E, F, and shelf G. And from the passenger side, we've got those 4 boxes A, B, C, D. Now, when you're getting ready for bed, it's preferable to sit in the bed when you're changing into your night attire, your pajamas. And for privacy purposes, you don't want to do that in the middle of a campground. So you need to sit on the bed. But you need clearance for your head. You don't want to bash your head off the ceiling. So you need to have a clearance labelled X in the diagram. But the bigger you make X, the smaller or the height of the box B can be, because they both take from the same clearance from floor to ceiling in the van. So there's a trade-off there between making X as large as possible while making box B high enough to be useful. And again, the length of the bed gives you room for a pillow, and you can sleep very comfortably. If you're 6 feet or less in height, you've no problem. The boxes were built from pine boards, sized 1 by 2. That's a nominal size. They're actually 3/4 inch by 1.5. Sometimes we use 1/3 where we needed extra strength. Pine was a very nice material to work with, strong but light. So we cut the sides as shown there and glued and screwed them together. The glue gives you a very strong bond with the pine, and the screws clamp the work together as the glue sets. So we built two side walls for the box. We cut the top piece and glue them together, and then cut the bottom pieces and assemble it, then glue it all together, and you've got the box there. It's quite strong. On top of the box we put the 1/4 inch G1S plywood. G1S plywood it's good one side, so it's very smooth, and it's sanded and varnished on top, so it's really nice for the bed platform. 1/4 inch was strong enough for us. We want to keep it light, and because the plywood is supported by the pine battens and the box in the box, it's very, very sturdy. So it's the best of both worlds. It's very strong, but it's light as can be. In some cases, the boxes can be seen from outside the van, and for those, we put a plywood cover 1/8 inch on the side of the boxes. It's only for aesthetic purposes, and cheap plywood was good enough for that. Building the drawers is much like building the boxes. Each drawer is essentially a box made with 1/4 inch plywood. The internal bracing or struts give you surface to glue and screw onto. So the 1/4 inch, you can't glue and screw that together. You need to have battens inside. But the 1/4 inch plywood is not strong enough on the sides of the boxes, especially where you've got the slider rails. So they're reinforced with a second piece of 1/4 inch glued at the top, as you can see, on both sides of the drawer. To pull the drawer out, you need some sort of grip, and so we used a cutout. You can put your hand in and pull. We don't want to use a handle. In a handle you can snag your leg in the van. It reduces the room and clutches the place. So everything, all drawers were cut with cutouts. So here's another view of the drawer. This is looking down into the drawer towards the back, from the back. The front of the drawer is towards the top of the picture. There's the internal struts. We glue the 1/4 inch plywood onto. The cutout itself, or the drawer pull, we needed to reinforce that as well as the sides, and then we can cut through it, and it's very strong. Here are some examples of the boxes themselves, one or two, just to show the real work that was done. So this is box E, one of the foot lockers at the front of the van. We pull it out to get access to personal clothes and items like that. This is the same picture from a different angle. You see the metal sliders for the drawer. You can see the reinforcing on both sides of the drawer, and you can see the cutout for we use as a drawer pull. Looking at the back of the same box, you can see some of the bracing. The back bracing there looks kind of strange. This was being designed as it was being built, so some of the stuff was strange, and you got to ignore that. Again, this is box C from the front side. Again, a good view of the reinforcing pieces on the side panel. Looking down into the box, you can see the internal struts, and you can see the reinforcing for the cutout for the drawer pull. Closer up for the drawer pull. And if we turn box E up on its end, we're looking straight in from the bottom of the box. You can see the metal of the drawer slides there on each side. And looking at the back, this is straight from the back. The drawer is fully engaged into the box. Again, the strange bracing there is is visible. It was probably too fancy and you didn't need anything like that. Over on the left, we've got a fitting that retains the drawer from slipping or sliding out when you're driving. Every time you brake, the drawers will slide forward. So you need to put in some sort of braking mechanism or to stay or to hold the drawers during your travel. So this is a close-up of it. It's really just a peg that fits through the side of the box and engages with the back of the drawer. And there's a cord on it so we don't lose it. So all the drawers had pegs like this to keep them locked in. The boxes themselves were bolted together, and you can see here the type of bolt. I think it's roughly a 2-inch bolt, or 2.25. And many bolts were used. You can see 2 bolts here. You can also see some dowels, wooden dowels protruding from the pine. These were used for positioning when we were putting the boxes in the van. You want them to lock in together easily, and then the screws will bind them together very tightly then. This is box C. It's the internal box that holds the battery, and you can see it's really got no sides on it except for the very bottom. It's got some thin plywood because that's visible from the outside, so that's an aesthetic effect. There's some butterfly nuts there for the battery. The battery is stored in box C. You can also see the supports for the drawer or the lid of box C. There's one on each corner and one in the middle of the spans, and the lid sits down on top of that. Because you're sleeping on the mattress and the mattress is pressing on the lid and the lid is pressing into the box, you need to support the lid fairly robustly. And this is the view from the top of box C with the lid in place. Venting of the van is really important for a good night's sleep. You can get very, very stuffy, you can get condensation, so bringing in outside air and expelling the stale air is very important. So we have the mattresses here with 2 figures lying on them. I don't sleep with my arms crossed like that, but that's the only picture I could get. So what we want is airflow across the top of your head, so where you, across your mouth or your face, where you're breathing. So we put an extractor fan in one of the windows on the passenger side, in the middle window. It forces the air out of the van and pulls in fresh air from the other side. So we need 2 vents, an extractor fan on one side and an intake vent on the other side. So looking at the van itself and the windows, we roll the window down halfway and insert the vent there. And the vent has a mesh in it, and I'll show you pictures of that in a second. So looking at the window, middle window, edge on, if you're at the back of the van looking towards the front of the van, you can see the van door and the glass window in blue there. So we roll down the window more than halfway, and we insert the vent and then roll the window back up, and so it locks in. So the vent can't be removed from the outside. It's secured on the bottom glass pane and up into the aperture where the glass normally goes at the top. So it's rock solid. So here's the picture of one of the vents. This is the intake vent. You can see it's made robustly. In fact, the vents were probably the hardest thing to make in this project. I used hardwood poplar for the frame, and also inserted some stainless steel rod, 3/16 stainless steel rods for security. I wanted to make sure nobody could put their hand through the vent, so keep us safe. You never know, and from animals, etc., also from people. So looking out from the inside of the van to the outside, this is the other side of the vent. And edge onto the vent, you can see the curve that you need in the vent, and it scallops narrower and narrower towards the top, so it'll fit in where the glass normally fits. And we also showed the bottom edge of the vent there with the slot that the window will come up into and lock in the vent. This is a picture of the extractor fans. These would be on the passenger side. So there's a view from outside and inside. We used two fans, computer fans, I guess about $25 each. I got magnetic bearings to ensure that the fans were ultra quiet, and so you could barely hear them whirring around, and you got a good extraction. This is a view of the vent in place, the extractor fan vent from the outside of the van. And from the inside of the van. You can see some perspex screwed to the vent. Because I didn't know what situations we would encounter on the road trip, I put in the perspex and mesh to give me possibilities of using this as a powered vent or as a passive vent. So if I took off the perspex, I have a vent, a normal vent that the air can circulate without any power. For privacy, you need some curtains. With curtains, you might not have so much light coming in. You might want to read at night. You might want lights, etc. So how do you get those fittings without damaging the van? So we have hand grips. There's 6 hand grips in the van, and they can be easily removed. You just flip down the cover and you get access to 2 screws that go into the chassis of the car. And to replace those, I built some oak fittings, a piece of oak, and made it the shape of the hand grip. You can see at the hand grips there's a sort of a depression there where the velour is pushed in. So this fitting sits over the holes where the hand grip was, and use the same screws and just screwed in. You can see some O-rings there, metal O-rings, and we use those to support the curtains. In fact, we had 6 oak fittings in the van, 3 on each side, 1 for each hand grip. The front one, we used that to support a bar across the driver and passenger seats for privacy from the windscreen. The middle ones we used to screw the LED lights onto, and the last one we used just purely for curtains, and also we use to support the ventilation fan that I'll talk about later. And there's a close-up of the LED gooseneck lamp. It's quite bright, but it's just a 2-watt lamp. It's very efficient, just sips the power. And lastly, this is shelf G. It's folded here, but it's not necessary to it to be folded. The original design just called for that, but it's no longer necessary. And in order for it to fall flat, I used card table hinges. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the electrics. We kept the electrics very simple. There were just 3 items requiring power: the LED lights, the ventilation fans in the window vents, and a cooling fan that we needed. Some of the places we visited were super hot, and the fan made sleeping at least a little bit tolerable. So you can see here the vents, window vents, the light, and the cooling fan at the bottom, a 12-volt fan, gave a nice breeze within the van. The items were powered by a 12-volt battery, a standard AGM battery, and the battery was charged through a simple, I guess a smart battery charger. The charger takes in a 120 volt AC and gives out 12 volt DC to drive the battery. The battery charger itself could be driven by 120 volt campsite power. If you had an electric campsite, you just plug in your battery charger and you're good to go. Or you could power the battery charger via the light socket, the lighter socket in the van, the 12 volt lighter socket. Feed it through an inverter. It changes the 12 volt DC up to 120 volt AC, and that can drive the battery charger. Using an inverter and a battery charger, you get a loss of efficiency there, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, 40%. But it was simple setup, and it served my purposes, so I was happy enough to lose that amount because it just worked. I didn't want to connect to the battery in the car or put in isolating relays and get complicated like that. Didn't want to touch or modify the van in any way. So this is the battery box, the battery inside it, standard AGM battery, and some sockets there on the edge of the box. That's a close-up of some of the wiring, the fuses and the bus bar there to distribute the positive and negative supplies. And on the left of the battery, you can see then the data for the battery, the group 24. That's the size, general size of the battery, and it's 79 ampere hours. So that's it, the capacity. It's 1 amp running for 79 hours roughly. It's measured here at, I suppose, 20 amps an hour. So that probably ran for 4 hours. But that's for, I guess, 100% depletion of the battery, and you would never go there. So the capacity would be much less than what's quoted here. And the cooling fan was the biggest draw on our power, and at maximum throttle it's taking 2.6 amps. So if you were to flatten your battery, you'd get maybe 30 hours out of that. So you never flatten your battery, so it'd be much less than 30 hours. And if you're sleeping 8 hours a night, you might get 2 to 3 nights off from a full battery charge. Hi, it's still winter here in Ottawa. We've got a lot of snow still, but today the air temperature should go up past the freezing point, so it's a nice day to do the insulation in the van. So let's do that. I removed the middle seats from the van. Next job is to remove the rear seats. There are some bolts which secure them to the chassis, so we've got to remove them first. So we need to remove this plastic cover, just clip it out, and you expose the bolts here. There's 3 of them. Make sure you put these bolts back in. If you drive in rainy weather, the rain can seep up through the holes. We need to take this plastic thing away. Be careful taking it out, don't break the tabs. And if you pull back the carpet, you can see where the hinge is connected with 2 bolts here. It's spring loaded. There's a hole in the middle here, and you can use a screwdriver to release the tension. So you need a screwdriver to mind the tension on this, and we'll remove the 2 bolts. Pull back the carpet, and you can see and that's the hinge off. So we do the same on the other side, and then we can lift it out. The final set of bolts are underneath this cover, so you just pry that off. There's two bolts here, and we just undo those. So with these two out, then you're ready just to take the seat out. Get someone strong to help you. It's quite a weight. With the back seat removed and the middle seats removed, you're ready to start the installation. Reversing the process and putting the rear seat back in is a little more difficult because you've got to contend with taking the pressure on the spring-loaded hinges, but it's relatively easy. So I've brought up all of the boxes from storage. You can see them lined up there. This is a fitting I didn't talk about. Because we have the sloped floors, the rear seat well also slopes forward. So in order to make it level, I need some sort of scallop floor that I can put in so to keep the boxes level. I'll be installing box D and E first, the foot lockers, but we need to secure them to the van itself. It's really important that they don't move around when you're in transit. So we use some open-end eye bolts like this that hook under the seat, bars like that. Drill the hole in the bottom of the box, and slips up there. It's bolted on the other side and slips under there. You can see there the bolt attaches the box to the metal bar that the seat normally rests on, and there's a nut there secures it. I actually put two nuts to make sure that it doesn't wobble off during travel. Put a second bolt here to secure box D in place with its two nuts. Then we'll use our bolts here and bolt the two boxes together. The boxes have dowels on the main structure here, and that allows the boxes to easily come together and mate. Box C is next, and it just comes up against this front box and engages nicely there. So box C has been bolted here, and here, nice secure, and there are positioning blocks here glued to box D so that box C can easily engage on it and is supported. This is box A, and that will be going into the seat well to support box B on top of it. You can see here it's sort of curved in because the seat well curves, and you have to make that. So and this is bolted down to the floor in the seat well. From the design I showed earlier, box B should sit here directly, but when I assembled it, I had some spare space between this box and the top box, so I built a very small, very narrow, shallow drawer to take up the slack here. It gives you a nice, for flat trays and things like that. So box C is also secured to the floor of the van. It's a small little U-bend, slits under here, catches the seat restraint or seat bar, and it's just screwed home like that. Now we'll put box B in and secure that. With box B in place, we now go and put box F, the final box. It will be bolted to the box in front and the boxes at the side. With box F in place, we put in one more restraint to lock down the whole structure to the chassis of the car, and we reuse two of the bolt holes from the rear seat hinges, the middle hinges. We have a piece here, and it just fits in nicely, and it screws into the side. The last structure is shelf G, and we just attach it to box F with the hinges here. And so we can fold I made an additional fitting to carry our water supplies. It's just basically a box with some clips that lock in to the seats bars here, and so it goes down here and screw it into the side of the, and put your water there and your bungee cord, and you're good to go. So this is a 5.5 US gallons, 20 something liters of water, fresh water. It's very heavy when it's full, but you need a lot of water when you're going on a desert trip or to hot places. So now the structure is essentially complete. All the boxes are in place, the shelves in place, everything's bolted together, and we're ready to do the bedding. But I just want to do a walkthrough of the structure itself before we do that. So this is shelf G. It's nicely hinged here and folds back. I put in the cooler that we use and the stove, the trusty Coleman stove. So, and of course that gives access to box A, and so in here we can store a tremendous amount of pots and pans and all sorts of food preparation items. Over here is the large drawer, pulls out through the back. This is our food drawer. All the food items were stored in this, and it gives a nice smooth level surface for our bedding platform. And over here we have the foot lockers. Take the peg out. The size of a large suitcase, volume wise. Stop back in. We're good. Same on the far side. And here we have box C. Taking the lid off, and inside we've got the battery box with some of the connections, and we've got the light here. So it's quite bright. At night it's very bright. On the side of box C I added a little voltmeter for the battery. See, so if I switch it on, it's giving me a reading 12.4. Margaret sewed up all the curtains, and we've just installed them here to show you what it was like.
So this is how we open them during the day, and we keep them out of the way by tying them up with simple ties using Velcro. And actually you can tie them to the seat belt, so it just keeps them neat and tidy there. And same with this one. I get to this one by going around the back. Slide it back this way so that the windows are all free. But you do have the privacy during the night, which is great.
And in the front you use the bar between the two sides here, and we suspended the curtain from that and gave us privacy at the front. In the design section I mentioned that box F, the biggest box, was only accessible by lifting off the mattresses. It had a drawer here, or a lid here, and you could burrow under there and get your long-term stuff. When we came back from the trip, I decided to upgrade that a little bit, just as follows. So take out the cooler and the stove can stay. I put in a new drawer here, the length of that. The space essentially was unusable or not really well usable on the trip, and so the drawer makes it really, really nice. So it gives us so much more space. And at the same time as I put in that new drawer in the box, I put in a little section for the battery charger. On the trip itself, this was on the floor somewhere when we needed it and put away otherwise. And so it's nice to have its own little slot in here. There. Box B has these cutouts here. These are obsolete now. Previously, a board went down here and on the other side, and it supported the shelf right across. But the shelf was awkward when you're sleeping. You bumped your shins into it, so we got rid of it. And it's time to put the mattresses in. I put one there, one of the memory foams, and I put the second one. So this was originally queen size. We cut this section off it and also a little section at the end. It's really, really comfortable. It was important for us to have a really comfortable night's sleep, so I like the idea of using sheets rather than sleeping bags. Too much camping in the past and sleeping bags. So, and of course, the top sheet as well. And of course, a duvet. And finally, our pillows. Not made for a very, very comfortable sleep, apart from the heat. So that was our minivan conversion project. We had a lot of fun touring the national parks in the United States for 3 months. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.